Hi, I'm Kimberly Butler. Welcome to my vlog. Politicalization of the medium. Amy Goodman, Dan Rather, John Ziegler all had opinions.
The main, what you call serious news outlets have compromised their integrity simply by acting as a megaphone for those in power, for what I call the access of evil. And that is trading truth for access. You know, they go to the White House, they know that their question will be asked if they maybe throw a softball question, and then they can get the next question asked. They can get the vice president to respond or sit down with the president. I don't think the trade-off is worth it. Politicians need journalists more than journalists need politicians. We are so powerful in the United States, the most powerful country on earth, but when it comes to getting information, we are so insulated. For example, if you did a poll of Americans how the rest of the world feels about the war in Afghanistan, right? President Obama has said he's for withdrawing troops from Iraq, although that plan has not been fully laid out or fully questioned what his plan is. But on Afghanistan, he's talking surge, he's talking expanded war. Most people in the world are opposed to this.
Washington is a corrupt place where lobbyists drive the agenda, and you have the Democrats who say, let's tax the rich to pay for health care reform, and the Republicans who say, let's tax health care benefits for the unions because they're just like income, they should pay their fair share. And you have people refusing compromise. It's a very important story, and I think I'm uniquely positioned again because of my maybe muddled ideology to point to the hypocrites and the assholes on both sides. The lobbying industry that is paid mercenaries who are hired to influence the direction of public figures who presumably have the interests of their constituents rather than the lobbyists in heart and mind. I think it's pathetic how even the noblest get tainted by that process. And we have to be vigilant, and we have to continually expose those, and particularly the hypocrites.
Those who control the flow of information about negotiations leading up to war or battlefield reports, those who control the flow of information are best able to control public opinion. These big international corporations, they need things from the powers that be in places such as Washington. And of course, the power in Washington, whether it be Democrat, Republican, or mugwump, they need these corporations, campaign contribution, and so forth. The corporations need legislation, they stop legislation, they have regulatory needs. And all of this has affected its seep down into newsrooms. I think the public at large is not fully aware of that.
Stories that used to be knockout blows for public officials. Nancy Pelosi. I mean, that's a knockout blow. She flat out lies about what she was told when she was told about torture. She accuses the CIA of lying to her.
So yes, I am saying that they are misleading, that the CIA was misleading the Congress.
The proof is indisputable, and she's still Speaker of the House. And my guess is she'll survive it, largely because of the bias in the news media. Also largely because it's somewhat of a complex story, not that sexy, takes a little bit of time to understand it and to get to the bottom of it, which the American people are no longer capable of. Our attention spans are too short. I go back to Bill Clinton getting away with committing perjury to a grand jury, that when the President of the United States is able to blatantly perjure himself to a grand jury, not just a deposition in a civil trial, but a grand jury, and not only gets away with it, but today is still considered to be an esteemed former president.
Public comments and my silence about this matter gave a false
Then what can't you get away with?
I misled people.
I think that the stereotype of Fox News is best exemplified by the fact that John Edwards, the sleazebag Edwards, when he was running for president, could say to the entire Democratic Party, boycott this network because they're far right-wing, what he really meant is boycott this network because they're extremely critical of me. And as it turns out, for good reason.
We live in an era now where it's not what gets reported that matters, because everything gets reported somewhere. It's what gets repeated that matters. And who chooses what gets repeated? It is really still a fairly small group of media elites in New York and LA who determine what gets repeated. My film Media Malpractice deals with how that phenomenon impacted the 2008 presidential election.
Today, it's all about Sarah Palin's $150,000 wardrobe bill. This clothing story, the $150,000 the RNC supposedly spent on clothes for Sarah Palin, $150,000 makeover paid for by the RNC.
I can see Russia from my house.
Which said that they could see Russia from their home?
Oh, that would be Palin.
That woman, Sarah Palin.
Palin.
And there is no question that that was the vehicle through which most of the news media bias was seen publicly, where negative information about Barack Obama may have been reported and dismissed and played down one time on a nightly newscast for 15 seconds, while negative information about Sarah Palin was repeated time and again and again and again. And that's how you make an impact in this day and age.
The treatment of Obama in the media and the traditional media and the new media was very favorable, was very glowing. I mean, this is a classic example of where the message is packaged in a pretty awesome messenger. Look at him. Look at his wife. Look at his daughters. Look at his story. That's heady to cover, and that's going to play into it. That's not going to play into a critical assessment of his healthcare policy and what his platform is on points A through D. But it's overall, I mean, what's the more fun thing to cover? What's the more fun thing to lead with? If you're a reporter assigned to cover Obama and you go to meet him and he's shooting hoops with people or turning water into wine, I mean, you're going to write about that.
As the power of the presidency has grown in this country, the modern presidency, and let me date that for purposes of this discussion, of the post-World War II presidency, has been increasing power to the presidency. And one of the major powers of the American presidency is the power to persuade. So each successive presidency has thought more, studied more, and gotten better at saying, listen, we need to sculpt the news insofar as we're able to do so for our partisan, political, and or ideological agenda.
As newspapers evolved, they all had a philosophical or political, if you will, bent. The New York Times, you knew you were getting a liberal paper. The Houston Chronicle or the Manchester Union Leader, you knew you were getting a conservative paper. The Wall Street Journal is conservative. The Washington Post is liberal. You know this. But because of the Federal Communications Act, television could not carry any of those editorial bents. And it was only when the FCC, when the Federal Communications Act was revised, and when cable news, when Fox notably got on the air, that Fox was able to go on the air with an editorial bent.
The fact is, I work for NPR. It's not a secret. The fact is, I work for Fox. It's not a secret. I think there are people who listen to NPR who say, well, wait a second, why is Juan Williams, who works for NPR, also appearing on Fox? Is he giving credibility to a conservative media operation by going over there? And are they using NPR's credibility? And then the people at Fox say, why are you publicizing this left-wing news outlet by identifying Juan Williams as working for NPR? You're in an environment where the real zealots on either side are always ready for war, and anytime they see any evidence that somebody might have shifting alliances, they don't think, oh, that's interesting. They should hear what he has to say. That's important. That's all part of true civic discourse, that different voices are heard in different environments. They say, no, 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 we want you to just be with us, because I think, this comes back to our earlier point, they just want you to deliver the message they want to them.
Hi, thanks for watching. Please send us a comment. Next time when we see you, we'll talk about the dehumanization of the medium.